Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Armenian News Network Groong Week in Review for December 29, 2024. We have with us Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan, who is the chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. Hello, Benyamin. Welcome to our final show of 2024, our 103rd show of the year.
Ողջույն Benjamin.
Hello, Asbed. Hello, Hovik. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure to have you here. For celebrating the holiday, I tried to find a shirt with all the Christmas colors and the spirit of New Year and everything. So anyway, let's hit our topic. Last Monday, Pashinyan wrote that the OSCE Minsk Group led negotiations over the last multiple decades on Artsakh all revolved around returning Nagorno-Karabakh to Azerbaijan. All three presidents slammed him for this, and Pashinyan then invited them to debate him, and all three of them rejected him. Asbed Bedrossian, who is actually kind of considered his political mentor, or at least used to be considered that, he challenged Pashinyan to publish every draft of the negotiations to show the facts, instead of diverting attention from the bitter reality that Pashinyan, has created in Artsakh. Meanwhile, in Azerbaijan, Aliyev keeps repeating his latest demands, changing Armenia's constitution, settling hundreds of thousands of Azeris in Armenia, jointly dissolving the OSCE Minsk Group, mutual indemnification from international lawsuits, demilitarizing Armenia, and the Zangezur corridor, which he says he's got out-of-band channels and methods with Pashinyan that he's going to solve, not necessarily in the context of this peace agreement or whatever. So, Benjamin, to what do you attribute Pashinyan's latest round of fake assertions about the talks? Why this and why now?
Okay, thanks, Asbed. Really very interesting question, because I believe all knows that negotiations in the last 26 years, from 1994 until 2020, negotiations were not about how to give Artsakh to Azerbaijan. Because if negotiations were about how to give Artsakh to Azerbaijan, I believe previous negotiators from Armenian side, they had plenty of opportunities to very successfully complete the task. I think it was not a very tough task to say to Azerbaijan that, okay, guys, I'm ready to recognize Karabakh as part of Azerbaijan. So what's the problem? So there are different explanations, maybe some in psychological level, that still Mr. Pashinyan tries somehow to shift blame from himself for all the disasters which happened in the period of 2020, 2023. Also, let's not forget that in 2026, the latest, Armenia is going to hold the parliamentary elections. Also, there were and still are rumors that maybe Senate elections may happen in 2025. But in any case, even if no Senate elections, then regular elections will take place no later than summer 2026. And of course, I may assume that what happened in Artsakh in the period of September 2020, September 2023, could be one of the hot topics discussed and used against the current government and against the ruling party. So probably Mr. Pashinyan would like somehow to shield from these accusations, or try to at least convince part of the electorate that this was not his fault, or he's nothing to be blamed, because he took the protest, which in any case was leading to where it led at the end of the day in September 2023. So from my personal perception, I see these two options. Either, yes, psychologically try to shift blame, but I think the more importantly, probably this should be related with upcoming 2026 elections. Because again, I may assume that the terrible tragedy which happened with Artsakh in this period between 2020 and 2023 will be and should be one of the key hot topics discussed, and definitely a lot of blame, accusations, and criticism will be targeted against the ruling party, personally against Prime Minister. So by trying to push forward these ideas that everything was decided before, or at the end of the day, everything which happened, this was objective, or this was inevitable, that Armenia had zero chance to avoid the ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh, and etc. Probably, I think this all should be related with these upcoming parliamentary elections, and with hope somehow to, if not eliminate the negative impact, at least to decrease the negative impact which this tragedy of Artsakh may have on ruling parties' result in elections. Regardless, they are going to take part in 2025 or in 2026.
Benjamin, Pashinyan has said that he can jointly agree to dissolve the OSCE Minsk Group if a so-called peace deal is agreed upon. And then we also had Zakharova unexpectedly say that the OSCE Minsk Group has become irrelevant when Armenia recognized Artsakh as part of Azerbaijan, and that Armenia and Azerbaijan should jointly apply to dissolve it. My question is, why is this a focal issue right now? And we know that it's one of Aliyev's demands, but is it also something that interests Russia right now? Why chime in on the matter from Zakharova? Why did she chime in on the matter? And, do you see any prognosis where the OSCE Minsk group can become relevant again if, they don't dissolve it, of course?
First of all, I think from Pashinyan's point of view, what he said is absolutely logic because Prime Minister himself and also ruling party reiterated many times, especially after September 2023, that for them there is no Nagorno-Karabakh, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh issue. So from this logic, okay, if for you, and let's put this way, if from your perspective there is no Nagorno-Karabakh, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, then any group dealing with this non-existing Nagorno-Karabakh or not existing Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, frankly speaking, makes zero sense. So from Pashinyan perspective, everything is logical. I'm not sure why he thinks that this Minsk group should be dissolved after peace agreement is signed. Probably his logic is that, okay, we can say about there is no Nagorno-Karabakh conflict only after peace agreement is signed. So we can say that there is no Nagorno-Karabakh now, but Nagorno-Karabakh conflict, which in a broader sense was conflict between Armenia and Azerbaijan, not only about Nagorno-Karabakh. At the end of the day, part of Armenian territory are under occupation, and Azerbaijan demand extraterritorial corridors through Armenia's internationally recognized territories. So maybe from Pashinyan's logic, okay, there is no Nagorno-Karabakh anymore, but still conflict is there as far as there is no peace agreement signed. Regarding why Russia suddenly remembered about the OSCE Minsk group, I think this is part of this Russia's criticism against the West in general, because Zakharova not only said that yes, the best way is Armenia and Azerbaijan jointly apply to dissolve OSCE Minsk group, but again she stated that look, after February 2022, as the United States and France rejected to cooperate with Russia. So this, I think this is a part of this general criticism towards the West by Russia, that after February 2022, it was the West who deliberately destroyed all mechanism or shared platforms between Russia. I think this is just an opportunity for Zakharova or for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to again accuse West of destroying the joint platforms which existed with Russia before February 2022. From a more practical point of view, can OSCE Minsk group be relevant anytime soon? I'm not sure, and frankly speaking, even if let's assume that for whatever happens, of course, we are speaking about mid and even long-term perspective, not next year and not definitely until 2030, not even, I guess, until 2035. But even if after 2035, like 10 years from now, situation is going to be changed, and there will be some opportunities for Armenia to at least reverse part of what happened in 2020, 2023. I'm absolutely not sure that OSCE Minsk group will play any role here. Like existence or not existence of OSCE Minsk group will somehow impact what may happen in this like very long-term future, even if there will be some opportunities to make some shifts. So from this perspective, I'm not sure that OSCE Minsk group will be dissolved because for this there should be a unanimous decision in OSCE, and even if let's assume Armenia and Azerbaijan agrees on that, I don't exclude that Russia, France, and US will still use this opportunity to accuse each other for destroying shared formats and etc. But so from my perspective, I believe at least for 2025, OSCE Minsk group legally will be there. Factually, let's be frank, there was no OSCE Minsk group really starting from February 2022. I believe the last joint statement of co-chairs, Russian, American, and French co-chairs, they issued in December 2021, if I'm not mistaken. So for short-term perspective, my assessment is that OSCE Minsk group will be there legally, but factually there will be no OSCE Minsk group. But again, existence or not existence of OSCE in this group, I don't think it will play a significant role in impacting Nagorno-Karabakh Armenians or the future of Nagorno-Karabakh even longer.
Do you think this will be the case regardless of whether the West and Russia are at each other's throat? Because I think most of the problem that we're seeing with the Minsk Group right now is that these co-chairs can no longer sit at the table and discuss anything because of the war in Ukraine. But if this is going to eventually go away, is it possible for the Minsk Group to ever regain potency?
Good question. Yes, there are a lot of hopes or speculations or whatever that in 2025 war in Ukraine may be stopped. But even if war in Ukraine stops for some understanding between Russia and the United States, I don't believe that this will mean that Russia and the West will come back to the situation of which they had before February 2022. So even if there is no war in Ukraine and some sort of understanding is there to freeze the conflict and to create another delimitation zone similar to what is between North Korea or South Korea, or even what's happening in Cyprus. I don't believe this will mean that the West and Russia will have no conflicts. Accusations will continue. I'm pretty much sure that significant part of sanctions will be there. I don't exclude that some sanctions may be removed as a part of this US-Russia understanding, but definitely not all sanctions. And I think definitely even not a majority of sanctions. So my understanding is that even if there is let's call it some sort of understanding between the United States and Russia on Ukraine, but still Russia-West relations will be in a negative area for years or for decades. So even from this perspective, I don't see Russia and West coming back to full cooperation on any issue, including any potential issue regarding potential changes in this new status quo around Nagorno-Karabakh. New status quo, I mean status quo after September 2023. So frankly speaking, I think the likelihood is extremely low that any cooperation between Russia and the West, any meaningful cooperation between Russia and the West will take place around any major issues in the Eurasian continent or globally, including the potential changes in this newly emerged status quo around Nagorno-Karabakh.
Benjamin, let's move on to the so-called peace agreement or agreement for interstate relations or whatever it's called now. Both sides, I guess, Aliyev and Pashinyan stated that the agreement has 17 points, out of which 15 are agreed upon, and 2 remain to be agreed upon. While Aliyev himself actually laid out 5 or 6 other demands that are not part of the agreement that seem to be preconditions. Am I understanding that Aliyev has additional preconditions that will preclude any agreement from being signed, despite Pashinyan rosily pretending that the agreement is close to signing? And can you tell us what are the major preconditions? What are the major points in the agreement that are still yet to be agreed upon? We probably don't need to go through all of it, but I think the most important ones I think we should cover a little bit.
So first of all, for me personally, as an expert or a person or analyst who was looking into the South Caucasus geopolitics for at least in the last 16 or 17 years, it was very clear immediately after September 2023 that Azerbaijan is not going to sign anything with Armenia, that Azerbaijan simply will imitate some sort of negotiations for some period of time, and using this time to digest the ethnic cleansing of Armenians, which, by the way, Azerbaijan did very successfully. And now, for example, if you will take part in even expert dialogues or even the meetings between or with diplomats, no one is speak about Nagorno-Karabakh. All speak, oh, let's make peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So the issue of Nagorno-Karabakh, ethnic cleansing, and all the wrongdoings which Azerbaijan did in Nagorno-Karabakh, this already are forgotten, while only like 14 or 15 months passed. So yes, Azerbaijan, after September 2023, had zero intention to sign anything. He just used negotiations or imitation of negotiations to create some positive environment around this process and to reduce any potential negative impact against Azerbaijan for ethnic cleansing, which Azerbaijan did in Nagorno-Karabakh in September 2023. And that let's not forget that International Association of Genocide Scholars made a special statement calling what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh as a genocide.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a most authoritative body, academic body. So this is not a political assessment. which you can argue to say, oh, this is driven by geopolitical interest, by political interest. This is a pure academic assessment by the brightest brains in the world studying the genocide as a phenomenon, which unanimously accepted that what happened in September 2023 was not only the ethnic cleansing, but was affected genocide. So what Azerbaijan did, he simply used this process of so-called negotiations, different format, like let's meet in Tbilisi, let's meet in Almaty, let's meet in Washington, let's meet here, there. I'm ready to go even to Moscow. If Armenia does not want to go to Moscow, let's go to Almaty. Okay, maybe we can go to Dushanbe, to Sri Lanka, or whatever. The whole process has a key goal for Azerbaijan, simply gradually to make the world forget what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh in 2023. And Azerbaijan was very successful because, again, now no one speaks about Nagorno-Karabakh, what happened in Nagorno-Karabakh, that Azerbaijan should be responsible for anything. Everything is forgotten. Now all speak only about Armenia-Azerbaijan peace agreement. But as I mentioned, Azerbaijan has zero intention to sign peace agreement, and I will briefly explain why. So, because question may arise, okay, what Aliyev want? He got everything which he couldn't even dream about like 10 years ago. For example, in late December 2014, probably Aliyev could not dream that all Nagorno-Karabakh leadership are in jail in Baku, zero Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh, and zero backlash against Azerbaijan.
Or even
My
5 years ago.
Yes, even 5 years ago. No, I would say even probably even 3 years ago, because even after 2020 Nagorno-Karabakh war, which was of course disaster for Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh, but still, for example, in summer 2021, probably few could imagine that only 2.5 years from summer 2021, we would have the situation which we had, for example, in December 2023. So why Azerbaijan is not signing anything? I see here two issues. One related with domestic legitimization of the regime, and the second about geopolitics. So domestic legitimization of the regime. We should not forget that Azerbaijan is a family ruling country. De facto, I would call it de facto, it's a monarchy under the wrapping up of republic, because Heydar Aliyev was a president of Azerbaijan 1993-2003, and Ilham Aliyev is a president from 2003 until now, and he was just re-elected in 2024 for another 7 years. So how you should explain the family rule to your society, and how you should make that the majority of society is happy, or at least is ready to accept the family rule. Before 2023, there was two pillars of this regime legitimization. One pillar was this constant promise of so-called we will bring back Nagorno-Karabakh, and second legitimization was the rising promise to rise or raise living standards of population. And when starting from 2006, 2007, oil and gas money, rainfall of oil and gas money started to pour into Azerbaijan. Of course, significant part of these resources were controlled by very few people, but in any case, significant part of Azerbaijani society got some revenues. So ruling family was able to really raise living standards of the population, and also this non-stop promise that we will bring back Nagorno-Karabakh, look, we are pouring billions into our defense budget, etc., etc. So what situation we have, for example, in 2024? First promise is done, and of course, President Aliyev will do everything to sell this victory as long as possible. But you cannot sell this victory to your population for 10 years, for 15 years, for 20 years. While definitely, I may guess that President Aliyev would like to see his family rule continued for another 30 or 40 years through himself, his wife, or maybe his son, the younger Heydar Aliyev. So the first pillar, which was there until 2023, is not going to work at least for another 20, 30 years. And second pillar, raising of living standards, second pillar of legitimization of family rule, also is not going to be there because oil and gas of Azerbaijan resources are going down, prices are not so high, but also the demand will go down. If not now, then after 2030 or after 2035, due to the green transition. So the both pillars, which somehow were legitimizing President Aliyev's family rule, are not going to be there in the next 5, 10, 15 years. So definitely, Mr. Aliyev needs another pillar of legitimization. And my guess is that they decided that the legitimization should be this nationalistic discourse with another two pillars. Pillar number one, the concept of Western Azerbaijan, that part of Armenia or entire Armenia is a historically Azerbaijani land, that Armenians perpetrated genocide against Azerbaijanis, ethnic cleansing, and etc. So Azerbaijani should at least return to Western Azerbaijan, if not uniting Western Azerbaijan with Azerbaijan, but at least probably to create some autonomous Western Azerbaijan Republic inside Armenia. And the second pillar of nationalistic discourse is the idea that Turkic world should be united to be able to be one of the pillars of this emerging multipolar world, or one of the poles of this emerging multipolar world. Because as Aliyev is stating publicly many times, no Turkish country, even Turkey itself, is able separately to be a pole in this emerging multipolar world to compete in equal terms with Russia, China, United States, India. But if there will be united Turkic world, which will include Turkey, Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan at least, then we will have the area of approximately up to 200 million population, or at least 160, 170 million population, and GDP will be approximately $1 trillion. And then this united Turkic world will be able to compete all more or less in equals with the United States, China, India, Russia, etc. So this nationalistic discourse is directly targeted at Armenia, at least to southern part of Armenia, Syunik and Vayadzor. And Syunik and Vayadzor are interestingly being infused with both the so-called logic of Western Azerbaijan and logic of unification of Turkic world. Like some sort of Azerbaijani control should be established over southern Armenia because southern Armenia was past part of Western Azerbaijan, which means that southern Armenia, it was part of historically Azerbaijani homeland or Azerbaijani lands. But B, some sort of Azerbaijani presence should be in southern Armenia because the southern Armenia is a narrow strip of land which precludes, prevents, or creates obstacles for the unification of Turkic world. So this is a domestic framework why President Aliyev is not going to sign anything with Armenia, because he will get nothing from signing anything with Armenia, but he may lose many things by signing a peace agreement. So basic logic tells that there is a person A and there is a activity B or action B. So if action B gives zero benefit to person A, but action B may give significant or impact or inflict significant harm to person A, then most probably person A will do everything to not take the action B. So here action A is President Aliyev, person A is President Aliyev, and action B is signing a peace agreement. Again, signing a peace agreement will give zero benefits to President Aliyev, but it may inflict significant harm to President Aliyev. But this is like the domestic issues, but also geopolitics, because this domestic legitimization of the regime, this is also based on the geopolitics of the unification of the Turkic world. And again, for unification of Turkic world, you need some sort of influence in southern Armenia. So for these two reasons, President Aliyev, again, has zero motivation. There is zero logic behind President Aliyev signing anything with Armenia. There are a lot of logic to argue that President Aliyev will do everything in 2025, 2026, 2027, 2028, I don't know, 2029, to establish some form of Azerbaijani presence, influence into the southern Armenia. So when we speak about Azerbaijani preconditions, here is a very interesting trick, because President Aliyev is using term precondition. And it means, if you're an outsider viewer, you may think, okay, really President Aliyev has some genuine concerns about some things which are happening in Armenia, revanchism, militarization, Minsk Group, or whatever. But if these genuine concerns are met or satisfied, then he is ready to sign peace agreement. But this is not the case. That is why I am calling them not preconditions, but pretexts, because there is a significant difference. If I have precondition for someone, precondition A and B, and I am telling, okay, if these are preconditions, it means that if these preconditions are met, I will do the action. For example, I will sign peace agreement if my preconditions is met. If initially I have zero intention to sign anything, it means that these are not preconditions, these are pretexts, which means that even if these so-called conditions are met, I'm not going to sign anything. And that is why President Aliyev is increasing the list of preconditions, which in reality are pretexts. So even calling them preconditions, I think a little bit distorts the reality, because if we call them preconditions, we accept that really President Aliyev would like to sign peace agreement with Armenia, but there are some A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, which prevent President Aliyev for signing. So he genuinely wants peace, but he cannot reach peace because A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H. But from my perspective, genuinely President Aliyev has no interest to have peace with Armenia, because again, This peace will give nothing to Azerbaijani ruling family, while this peace may inflict significant harm to Azerbaijani ruling family. So they are not preconditions, these are pretexts. And these pretexts are, we can just, I may name it very quickly, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H.
Okay.
So two pretexts inside peace agreement. This is number one, that no foreign presence should be along Armenia-Azerbaijan border, which means also EU observer mission should leave.
And also it includes CSTO as well.
Yeah, but there is no CSTO and there is no Russian forces along Armenia-Azerbaijan border, because you know that in May 2024, Pashinyan applied to President Putin with request to move away Russian forces from Armenia-Azerbaijan border. I don't exclude that Pashinyan saw that, okay, if he will move Russian forces, which were armed ones, he may satisfy or solve the precondition number one of President Aliyev. And he may say, look, President Aliyev, you demanded no forces, no foreign forces, and I kicked out Russians. And EU observers are not forces because they are unarmed. But again, because these are not precondition but pretext, then Aliyev said, no, you know, when I was
Not
said
enough.
forces, I don't mean only armed forces, I mean also non-armed forces.
Binoculars can be thrown and inflict injury.
And that's
Yeah.
right.
But this was like precondition slash pretext number one. Pretext number two, which is part of agreement, is a demand to withdraw all legal cases against each other. So these are two pretexts which are part of this peace agreement, like two articles which are not agreed. But as I mentioned, it's absolutely not important. It's one article is not agreed, two articles is not agreed, because
Yeah,
even if
but
all
Benjamin,
articles is agreed.
this case of the mutual indemnification, dropping these lawsuits and stuff like that in international courts is very important, because you just mentioned moments ago that it was established by genocide scholars that what happened in Artsakh was a genocide, right? So what I think Aliyev is trying to do is basically having Armenia to completely legally drop that case so that he can be absolved of genocide, correct?
Yeah, definitely this will be
So
legal
this is a
whitewashing
real
for
case.
Azerbaijan.
This is a real issue for Armenia.
I mean, well,
Yes.
genocide, any state can bring up. It's not Armenia that can only indemnify. Of course, Armenia can not participate and can drag its feet, but I think for crime of like genocide in the ICC, I believe any other state can bring that up. So that's why I'm
Not only
saying that
ICC, but also ICJ. For example, now
ICJ.
South Africa brought up case against Israel for genocide in Gaza. It's not,
Successfully.
Yeah.
yes, it was not a Palestine authority. So theoretically, yes, any country can go to the International Court of Justice, ICJ, this UN court, and bring a case against Azerbaijan that, okay, you did genocide in 2023, and this is not a political statement. This is an assessment made by International Association of Genocide Scholars. So these two pretexts are part of agreement, but behind these two pretexts, Azerbaijan has other preconditions or pretexts. First is a changing Armenia's constitution and other laws. Then now, second is the dissolution of OSCE Minsk Group. The third precondition pretext is to put limits on Armenian army or Armenian army modernization, that there should be some limits, how and what type of weapons Armenia can buy or not buy, or etc. But again, so we mentioned already five pretexts, but because from my perspective, these are pretexts, I don't see too much logic trying to analyze and say, oh, this is important for Azerbaijan, this is not important, because if we're starting this type of discussion again, we admit it or accept it that President Aliyev has a genuine wish to sign peace agreement with Armenia, but because Armenia buys, I don't know, something from India, he's not able to sign. But if tomorrow Pashinyan will say, I'm canceling all arm deal agreements with India, President Aliyev will sign it. No, this is a pretext. And I'm pretty much sure if tomorrow Armenian government, let's assume in early January 2025, Armenian government will make these five statements. A, I'm applying to the European Union to cancel mission after February 2025. B, I am withdrawing all legal cases from all international courts. C, I am applying to the OSCE Minsk Group to dissolve the OSCE Minsk Group. C, I am immediately, by some legal trick, changing my constitution or all other laws. I am giving extraterritorial corridor to Azerbaijan. And the sixth point, for example, or whatever was the sixth point, even if Armenian government will do all these things within one day, I'm pretty much sure then tomorrow President Aliyev will say, look, these are very good, but unfortunately there is something else. And this something else, I don't know, maybe whatever. That, for example, Armenia, I don't know, should arrest all former soldiers who took part in all hostilities in the territory of Nagorno-Karabakh from Armenian side, starting from ordinary soldiers up to generals, and these are probably are thousands of people. These people should be arrested and extradited to Azerbaijan. Otherwise, there will be no peace agreement. So again, the key for me is not to confuse or not to replace pretext with preconditions. That is why in my speeches or analyses, I'm using the term pretext. So President Aliyev or Azerbaijan uses pretexts to not sign peace agreement with Armenia. And the key reason is that this peace agreement will give zero benefit to ruling family, to the leadership of Azerbaijan, but may inflict significant harm to the ruling family in Azerbaijan. At least this is my understanding of situation.
Benjamin, so I think you did a good job of explaining why Aliyev doesn't want to sign anything. And of course, my personal opinion about Pashinyan is well known on this show, but why is Pashinyan pretending that this is a peace treaty that is going to be signed? Any ideas on what Pashinyan's motivations and strategy, if there's a strategy, is?
From my understanding, the current government, and I'm speaking about foreign policy, not about domestic policy, fight against corruption, like bringing back these stolen assets or whatever, or making good quality pavements of the roads, highways, etc. On foreign policy, the key strategic asset of this government is a hope for peace, because it's clear that Armenian society is more or less tired of conflict. And it's normal because the conflict is there for more than 30 years, and we suffered humiliating defeats in 2020 and also in 2022 and in 2023. People are tired and people are afraid of, because it's 4,000 people which were killed in 2020, at least 4,000 people, and more than 200 in 2022, and more than 500 in 2023 in Nagorno-Karabakh. This is significant amount of numbers of casualties, and I'm speaking only about killed people, and the number of wounded are probably 11, 12, or 13,000. So these are too much for the society of 3 million people. So society is tired, and I will say a little bit is afraid of the new conflict. So in these conditions, probably Prime Minister thinks that the key asset of his foreign policy should be to, how to term it, maybe to sell the hope of peace.
I think that's like a chicken and egg, because don't you believe that society is tired or scared because the Armenian government is trying to propagate, scare them and say, we're defenseless. Look at what happened in Syria. You cannot say, I'm tired, I'm going to go away, and the enemy is going to go and say, okay, since you're tired, let's have peace. So I think it's really important to make sure that people understand that, listening, that I don't want to believe that the Armenian people natively are that tired. I think that a lot of it has to do with media manipulation, and both external and internal. I meet many people who are ready to actually continue to struggle, and in many ways, living in this region is a struggle. So I don't know what you mean by being tired, to be honest.
We saw back in May that people were not tired. People were on the streets, 40,000, 50,000. They were angry and they're ready to go, fight this government on issues.
Good question, but let's not forget about equation, because when I'm speaking with ordinary people in Armenia, the problem is that when you speak about Azerbaijan, yes, despite these defeats, people say, okay, but Azerbaijan is 10 million, but this is exaggerated number. Real number of Azerbaijanis are probably 7 or 7.5. So we are more or less will be able to fight with them. But when you add Turkey into this equation, many people are telling, okay, even if all 3 million Armenians, like newborn babies and 100 years old people, will take, I don't know, Kalashnikovs or missiles or whatever, if you put Turkey and Azerbaijan jointly, Armenia cannot resist alone. Of course, here we are jumping into the issue of alliances, but Armenia should have alliances. Then we can discuss, but why Armenia was part of CSTO alliance, now alliance is frozen. We have legally binding guarantees from Russia, but because of Armenia-Russia not good relations, put it mildly, no one knows these guarantees are working or not. And really, no one knows. Like if tomorrow Azerbaijan launches large-scale attack against Armenia, legally Russia should intervene, because the 1997 agreement on mutual defense, friendship, and blah, 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 still in force. But no one, I believe, neither in Armenia or in Russia, knows will Russia do that or not, because we are speaking with experts or other people. They are telling, okay, only Mr. Putin will be able to answer that question. And this depends on the situation, because if Azerbaijan attacks Armenia when war in Ukraine is stopped, maybe Mr. Putin's thinking will be in a way of ABC. But if, for example, Azerbaijan attacks Armenia in a situation when Ukraine starts to bomb Moscow with this long-range Western American or German or whatever missiles, then the thinking of Mr. Putin will be different. So Armenia in a situation when there is no reliable guarantees. There are some legal guarantees. No one knows these guarantees are working or not. There are no other guarantees. Again, I'm speaking about legally binding guarantees to provide direct military support, not only sales the weapons. Because, for example, even we see what's happening in Ukraine. Yes, West provides Ukraine with weapons. Yes, Ukrainians are telling, oh, you are sending too much, or sorry, too less. One, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are telling that Zelensky is the best PR person or salesperson in the world is going and take hundreds of billions of dollars. But regardless of what amount of weapons West is selling or sending to Ukraine, there are some weapons. But the problem of Ukraine is a shortage of manpower.
Look, sorry to interrupt you, but there are multiple factors that affect the readiness of a nation. And number one, I think, is morale. So many have said that Azerbaijan's goal is complete destruction of Armenian statehood. In Aliyev's mind, that's what the peace agreement means. And if Pashinyan is saying that, yes, we're going to agree to this, as long as we have peace, as long as we don't get any more deaths, essentially we're saying that, yes, we're agreeing if peace means dissolution of Armenia, dissolution of Armenia as a state, and that is what's on the table, and everyone is okay with it. I mean, is my
I think
understanding
the
okay?
issue of morale, of course, is very important. And here we have to accept that if government is telling that, okay, Karabakh was always part of Azerbaijan, or the whole Karabakh process was a mistake, the whole Karabakh movement was a trick by Russia to continue its, I don't know, colonial influence over Armenia, of course, this is also makes people less prone to conflict or even more tired because people are telling, okay, 30 years, we sacrificed a lot of things, including lives, money, economic well-being, everything, at least people in Armenia. And then if you are told that, okay, but this all was vain, it has nothing to do with Karabakh, this was only just Russian tricks, so the Karabakh issue itself was just Russia's trick to continue influencing Armenia, then of course this is also inflicting people's morale or readiness to fight or readiness to resist. And we may discuss and debate for hours, I guess, what starts first and why we have this tyranny. But I have a feeling that generally, and of course, there are thousands of people who are ready to take arms, to go to fights. There are thousands of people. But in Armenia, we have 3 million people. And in general, my understanding is that there is some sort of people really are tired of conflict. They are a little bit afraid of new war. And the government, when they speak that, okay, peace agreement is very close, because for the last 2 years, we heard many times, like, peace agreement is very close. We never have been as close to peace agreement as ever. This was, I think, even in late 2022. There was a lot of such statements in late 2023, after ethnic cleansing of Nagorno-Karabakh. So this is a situation when, for example, there is a person who is ill and there is no treatment yet available. And then every week he receives a call from, I don't know, some research institute, and they are telling that, look, like suffer or resist another 1 week, and we are very close. The new treatment, you knew the drug will be established and you will be cured. And somehow they are selling the hope to these people. My understanding is that the government is selling this hope of peace. Just like we are very close, very close. There is no agreement, but we are very close. And the logic is that at least there are chances that we may bring this peace agreement. I think what the prime minister is trying to do is trying to tell people that, yes, I told you that peace agreement will be there in late 2022, late 2023, late 2024. It did not happen, but still there are chances that it may happen in late 2025. But these chances, and no one in this type of political debate goes into the scientific assessment of the chances are 1%, 50%, 25%. But still, he's telling there are chances that this agreement may happen in 2025. But these chances are directly connected with, personally, me to be in power. So, like, you have two options. If you want to have at least some percentage of chances to have peace agreement, regardless this is a 10% or 80%, then you should keep me in the power. Because if I am leaving the power, then the chances of a peace agreement is zero. And frankly speaking, of course, I'm not a political technologist, but I believe that this is working or may work. on significant amount of people that yes, there were high chances that peace agreement may happen. It did not materialize, but still there are some chances. There are some hopes. While if there will be shift in government and there will be shift in power, chances will become zero. So the government on foreign policy trying to say people, okay, guys, it's either us and still we have some chances to bring peace with Azerbaijan. It's not 100%. War still may happen, but still there are chances also of peace. But if we are going, then you will face another disastrous war by 100%. Of course, we may argue that this is manipulation, political technologies, or whatever, but from my perspective, this is working, at least on part of society. This is what I feel.
So we have spent much of our podcast talking about the so-called talks or negotiations between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and it certainly looks like we're going to be continuing this thing throughout 2025, peace or no peace. So let me move on to our final topic here, Benjamin and Hovik. The three of us were together on the eve of 2024. I would say 366 days ago for episode 300. I think that was December 29, as a matter of fact. We each looked ahead to 2024 and shared some thoughts about events that might happen. And also we got together in July and we updated our predictions, and that was episode 347. So let me recap each of us and ask you what you think was the biggest story of 2024. I'll start. It'll be relatively easy. I made a prediction that the Armenian real estate market was going to possibly experience a significant downturn. Now, that didn't happen, but some of the concerns have remained for 2025. I predicted 50-50 that Trump would get elected, and then in July I said it was 75-25. Like you say, Benjamin, who knows about these percentages in scientific in a scientific way? But it was becoming clearer and clearer that Trump had the upper hand, and so that happened. So I'll call that a success. And then I also said that the Israel-Gaza war had a low probability of expanding to engulf the whole region. Now that happened. Israel has invaded Lebanon. Israel has killed over 45,000 Palestinians, a real genocide going on there. Israel killed a Hamas leader inside Iran, and then Iran sent barrages of missiles towards Israel. And finally, Israel invaded the south of Syria. And this is happening right now, as a matter of fact. So I'd say that things have gotten much worse, and I'll give myself a little check mark there. Benjamin, your three predictions. Some sort of Armenia and Azerbaijan agreement was going to be signed, but threats on Armenia would continue. And you said you said there was a medium chance in the middle of the year. What do you make of your predictions over the course of the year?
I think predictions went from like relatively hopeful to non-hopeful, or coming to zero. Because as I mentioned, yes, President Aliyev had zero chance to sign something, but in the early 2024, I saw that maybe some sort of agreement or statement may still help President Aliyev, at least before COP29, to somehow whitewash his image in the Western world. But apparently, he was successful to whitewash his image without this agreement or statement. So we see that nothing was signed, even a statement. No POWs were freed. I mean, before or during COP29. But still, no one can say that President Aliyev has a bad image, even in the West, like I don't know, the beacon of democracy in the world. So potentially, I think my assessment that President Aliyev will need something to be signed with Armenia, like framework agreement. We discussed that maybe President Aliyev will sign some one-page paper which will solve nothing, but this will be used to whitewash his image in the West. We have to accept that President Aliyev were able to whitewash his image in the West without signing anything with Armenia. So Armenia was kicked out of the equation of Azerbaijan-West relations, whitewashing or whatever.
You had mentioned, so you had a medium prediction that the conflict in Ukraine would be frozen and maybe a ceasefire agreement, some kind of an agreement would be signed. And also you had a low probability that some Armenians might return to Artsakh. Now, from our conversation today, I'm going to say that you kind of see almost a zero probability of that happening. Is that correct?
Yes,
You've
yes,
changed to a much more pessimistic outlook
yes,
on this.
if we speak about 2025, I guess possibility is close to zero.
Yeah. Okay. Hovik, you had said that there would be some kind of a meaningless Armenia-Azerbaijan treaty, quote unquote treaty, would be signed. Enclaves may be captured by Azerbaijan in Armenia. I guess well, I don't know if it was captured because it was flat out handed over by Pashinyan, and that was back in May, I think. You said
Yeah,
that
March,
Pashinyan,
April, May.
yes, that's right. Yeah. Pashinyan will take a more dictatorial steps to cling to power. The West will turn the blind eye. That was spot on. I think we have to give you a check on that one. And your low probability was that the Armenian opposition will figure out a how to struggle more effectively. What's your outlook on all this when you look at the review of 2024?
I think basically just like Benjamin, I thought that Aliyev may need some piece of paper to whitewash his image, but it was all up to Aliyev. And in terms of the last thing, which is the Armenian opposition figuring out how to struggle more effectively, I think at this point I'm beyond believing that the opposition itself can affect any change in Armenia. I think that the opposition protests this year were some of the most numerous in terms of manpower, and it included completely new faces. So the standard argument, well, as long as it's not someone from the old regime, then this will be good. But I think it's very unlikely for any change of power in Armenia to happen without some sort of external support. And I'm not saying support in terms of what the West is doing in Georgia, because
Mhm.
that's overt support. But I think that, for instance, if there is a regime change in Armenia, if the Bagrat Sirpazan movement was successful and they were able to take power in Armenia, would at least one UN Security Council member recognize the new government? Like, so for instance, would Russia recognize the new government? And I think Iran's role would also be important. And I think that in the regional dynamics of what's going on in terms of power, I think that the opposition has not been able to get any kind of even unofficial guarantee that they will get something, because we know for sure that if there is a power change in Armenia, then Aliyev and Erdogan would attack immediately, probably to take advantage of that situation. So it will be very important for existing agreements between Armenia and Russia, and existing agreements between Armenia and India, existing agreements between Armenia and France, as well as Iran, to continue to be in place. And that's, I think, the reason why we're not seeing many changes. So,
Mhm.
yes, I said Armenian opposition will figure out how to struggle more effectively, but I guess they haven't figured out that they need to have some external negotiators who can talk to these foreign governments and ensure some kind of a support.
Okay, well, looking forward to 2025, I was thinking about how to frame this because the whole high and low likelihood method, this probability thing, I wasn't sure if it was very effective because when I just looked at some of the things that I predicted, like the medium probability thing just happened, the low probability thing happened. Does that mean I was successful or not successful? I wasn't quite clear what that meant. So, what do you think might happen in 2025? What do you think some of the biggest stories for the region might be, Benjamin?
I would see three stories globally. The biggest story will be either the stop of hostilities in Ukraine or the continuation of hostilities in Ukraine, because in either ways, either in December 2025, we will see some sort of ceasefire in Ukraine, or we are not going to see some sort of ceasefire in Ukraine. Probably this globally, this will be the biggest story. Of course, if there is no situation like Black Swan, for example, what we saw in Syria in December, of course, it would be extremely challenging to predict in December 2023, then as a Assad regime will be collapsed within 10 days in December 2024. So if there is no Black Swan, probably the biggest story will be either the ceasefire in Ukraine or the absence of ceasefire in Ukraine. Regarding our region
Mhm.
broadly, like Greater Middle East, I think the key story is going to be related with Iran. Iran suffered several defeats in the second part of 2024, and either in 2025, Israel and the United States may think that this is the time to knock out Iran, or something internally may happen in Iran regarding the power transition, which is again is going to be a very complex situation. So I think the key focus will be situation in and around Iran. And if you are going to the region, to the South Caucasus, I think, of course, it's interesting to see how these demonstrations or political struggle or instability will continue in Georgia after these October 26th parliamentary elections and December 14th presidential elections. But key will be the scale, timing, and sort of escalation by Azerbaijan against Armenia. Because, as I mentioned, I don't see any reason why President Aliyev is going to sign something. Of course, I will be extremely happy to be wrong and see some sort of meaningful, not unmeaningful piece of paper, but some sort of meaningful thing signed between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But as I see no reason why President Aliyev is going to do that, then probably on Armenia-Azerbaijan, the key issue will be the scale, timing, and sort of escalation which Azerbaijan may launch against Armenia in 2025.
Hovik, what are your thoughts about some of the biggest stories that we might witness in 2025?
Actually, I would like to go back and say some of the biggest stories in 2024 that we missed, which was, I believe, Syria.
Well, we didn't really guess the magnitude of the regional escalation, right? We thought that there might be some sort of an escalation, but the
Yeah.
splintering of Syria was not. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
let's say we
yeah,
missed it.
and that was essentially a side effect of the war between Iran. Let's just put it that way, between Iran and Israel. But the fact, I guess, how dramatically it happened is still shocking. But I think that's essentially what Benjamin said, which is, I think most analysts are predicting some kind of an attack on Iran, whether it's external or internal, we don't know. I think that's a good guess, if I had to guess what's going to happen in 2025. And unfortunately, I don't see anything in Armenia to look forward to other than a regime change, because I see that this government is trying to sell fake peace that will continue to anesthetize Armenians and continue to not motivate them to fight. Whereas right now, the only guarantee of our survival is the ability of the internal Armenian nation to fight back. God forbid when Azerbaijan attacks, because for me, I think it's not an issue of if, but when.
Okay.
And I also think that the war in Ukraine may slow down. I don't think it will stop fully, but I think it will slow down. And unfortunately, I think that it will be replaced by other conflicts around us. So you tell us, Asbed, what are your thoughts in terms of your outlook for 2025?
Well, I think I also believe that the Ukraine war will probably wind down, and 2025 will be the start of some form of a negotiated solution. But I think Russia is going to play very hard. So I don't know that I can see an end to the conflict, to speak. Maybe the war will stop and all these people will stop dying on the battlefield, but I'm not sure that there's an end to the conflict in 2025. More regionally, like Benjamin was saying about the greater Middle East, well, sadly, I think we're kind of looking ahead to some dark times for the Palestinians. It seems like the world, including the Arab world, unfortunately, is happy to sit by and watch the Palestinians get decimated, and it's likely that they will be ethnically cleansed from their lands, like a Nakba 2.0 or something. I think as long as we are not addressing or we're sitting by and watching things like the Artsakh ethnic cleansing and not repairing those situations, people are just going to sit by and watch the next one, and it's going to be a TV event, if that. And I think this should be the biggest story of 2025. Whenever there's a genocide going on, it should be the biggest story, and Armenia should be very concerned about it. But the US mainstream media will probably shuffle it under the rug as it did in 2024. Most places don't even mention the magnitude of this catastrophe. They don't say 45,000 people have been murdered, and the US and Israel justify it as the right to defend themselves. And both of you talked about the situation in Armenia. I also feel like, I'd like to say that this scourge in Armenia called civil contract will start splintering from inside, but the West just keeps funneling money to keep them afloat. So I'm not sure we're going to see this. Look at the situation in Armenia. There's a security situation, an insecurity, a national insecurity system, where even a company like Lydian Armenia doesn't want to invest in Armenia, and the government has to come and give them guarantees so that they will invest in Armenia. And yet suddenly you have the EU and the West loan Armenia hundreds of millions of dollars. Literally, we've seen what in the last 2 months, 3 months, we've seen about 500 million get loaned to civil contract so that they can keep the government operating. And you wonder, why did they get that? And when I said loan, I really mean loan, right? Our children are going to have to repay these loans. They're not aid or anything like that. They're just loans and loan guarantees, but that's the situation. So I'm not sure that this in 2025, we're going to see that these people are going to go away. They're going to go down. We hope, but I've said this on the show, hope is not a strategy. So it's going to continue as is for a while, I think, sadly.
Well, yeah, my biggest hope is that Armenians realize that hope is not a strategy.
There's always
Yeah,
hope, right?
yes, that's for sure. That hope is not a strategy. Hope is more a religious thing, which itself is a good thing. I think in many religions, hope is a like basic pillar, but hope itself cannot do anything. I think hope is a something based on which you should have strategy in the actions. Like without hope, probably you can reach nothing, but also only with hope you can reach nothing. Hope
Yeah.
should be like a pillar upon which you act or not act, or at least doing something. Okay, either acting, not acting, but even not acting sometimes is a strategy, but definitely only hope is not a strategy. This is, I think, 400%.
Okay, well, so this review can take the place of our rants and personal thoughts, and we'll skip that one for this episode. Let's just leave it there for today and also for this year. So, Happy New Year, Benjamin, and thank you for all the time that you have spent with us this year. I know from all the comments on our pages how much our listeners have valued your insight. And Hovik and I don't need to speak for Hovik. He's right there. We deeply value your insight on our show.
Thank you, Asbed. Thank you, Hovik. It's really a pleasure to be with you.
Benjamin, you were one of our most important guests this year, and I hope that it will continue. And you helped us a lot in getting up to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube, so we do appreciate that. And I do want to celebrate small victories like that. I know Asbed doesn't like that, and
I'm just
but I
not
do
good
want
at
to.
it, but I do
No,
enjoy celebrating.
I'm
Yeah.
not good at it either. I don't celebrate too much, but I do want to acknowledge our guests. I think the contribution of our guests has been very
Absolutely.
important. So I want to celebrate with our guests, and I also give thanks to our listeners who did the actual subscription. Yeah, and Happy New Year, Merry Armenian Christmas. Armenians celebrate Christmas on January 6th, the Armenian Apostolic Church. We still have a week left for that. But we
Yeah.
also, of course, many of our listeners are American. So Merry American Christmas, which happened a week ago.
Շնորհավոր նոր տարի եւ Սուրբ Ծնունդ, everyone.
Definitely, and just few words from my part. I would also to thank you, to you, Asbed and Hovik, for your excellent show, because I think you are doing a very important thing to bring like objective and diversified opinions to the English-speaking auditorium. Not only like Armenians who mostly speak and understand English, but also to anyone in the world, experts, diplomats who are involved in regional geopolitics in South Caucasus and sometimes even in broader issues. Like what you are doing is amazing, and I will say is very, very important. So thank you for your efforts. And I believe the Groong itself as an email list was established like approximately 30 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, in 1990s. So
Yes,
this,
for the first Karabakh War.
yeah, so what you are doing for last 30 years is like really amazing. So thank you very much for that.
We'll talk to you soon, Benjamin. That was our weekend review show recorded on, well, it depends on whether it was December 30th or 31st. Some of us are 30th and some of us are 31st. Well, let me see. It's 31st even for me now. So this show was recorded on December 31st, 2024. We've been talking with Dr. Benyamin Poghosyan, who is a senior fellow at APRI Armenia. This is a Yerevan-based think tank, and he is also the chairman of the Center for Political and Economic Strategic Studies. For more on the participants on this episode, check out our show notes at podcast.groong.org/episode number. And of course, we would always love to have you as a supporter, and you can do that at podcast.groong.org/donate. I'm Asbed Bedrossian.
And I'm Hovik Manucharyan.
So please find us on social media and follow us everywhere you get your Armenian news. The links are in the show notes. Thanks for listening. We're going to talk to you in 2025.
Bye-bye.